I'm Michael Hartman. Was born in Germany, went to university in Denver, Colorado, and moved to Colombia at the beginning of 2018 and have been living here full time ever since then. I grew up in the city of Munich, and then later on out by one of the lakes outside of Munich. My childhood, I suppose, was pretty average German. I'm an only child. My dad was an accountant, which is how I became an accountant later on in life. And I was actually failing English in the German school system, if you can believe that or not. So one summer, my dad sent me to a summer camp at an international school where they made me speak English. And apparently, for the first time in my life, I volunteered to do any sort of schoolwork. So my dad promptly enrolled me in the Munich International School, which is why I later on went to university in the United States of America. Well, my first job when I was a teenager was selling German sausages, Würstel and beer down at a lakefront kiosk with my best friend at the time. His dad owned the kiosk, so my job was actually to get the ice cream bars out of the cooler when people ordered them. My first real job, I graduated with an accounting degree, was working for Pricewaterhouse in Denver, and I started as a tax accountant. And because I was born overseas, I was immediately designated to be the international tax guy. Not that I had studied anymore, but I did a lot of tax work for people that both had come from overseas to work in the United States, as well as for companies that sent people overseas. I did their tax returns and what are called tax equalization calculations and all those sorts of things. And I've been doing this kind of work part-time for the last 30 some years. And I remember in particular one day we had to file an extension for a gentleman who was an executive with an Australian company in Denver. And I prepared the extension, and the partner said, yeah, okay, why don't you take it over to this office, because he'll need to write a check and then bring it back, and the secretaries will mail it in. And I knew that the extension required a payment of like $200,000 for taxes. And I'm making like $1,000 every 2 weeks, so that's an unimaginably large amount of money for me. And I remember going across the street where this guy's office was and going up to his office, and very nice welcoming me. And he said, yeah, why don't you give me that and I'll take a look at it. And he took a look at it and had no problem, reached into his desk drawer and wrote a check for $200 and some odd thousand to the Internal Revenue Service. And like, wow, that's pretty incredible. I can't imagine people can do that sort of stuff. But working with a really high-end consulting firm, you meet people that normally you didn't meet. I mean, I worked on tax work. I'm not going to expose much, but for the owners of the Adolf Coors Brewing Company, and normal people just don't see that sort of stuff. One of the things I did research on was whether if you take your wife on a company airplane to go to the Super Bowl, whether you have to pay taxes on that, because that's called imputed income. So it was a very interesting job. Well, if you want to work in I would, my primary experience really is in investments and financial planning. If you want to get into that line of work, like any other job, I suppose, if you want to be successful, be prepared to work a lot of hours. I mean, I used to work probably 15 hours a day. One of the problems is it's a lot of time. The work has to be done after hours for the clients, because they have jobs and they want to come in at 6 or 7 in the evening. So you've already been there, full work day, and then you got client meetings. I think one of the biggest things is just kind of be yourself. There's so many so many people out there that are selling systems to be this sales guy or that sales guy, because the majority of the compensation in the financial industry really comes from commissions. And there's any number of ways commissions are disguised, whether they're called front end or back end commissions, or sales charges, but that's where you really make the money. If you want to be just working like on the data entry front, that's probably not where you want to go. To really help people, you want to get to know them. You need to know what people really want, and you need to go where you want to go. I mean, I remember I had a client in Colorado, and I had to drive up this mountain road. It was just this dirt road, and almost had to do switchbacks to get up to his fundamentally cabin. And then it turns out the guy had millions of dollars to invest. It was just his lifestyle. I mean, you don't ever underestimate people. We had a lady come into our office, and she had on wool knitted socks and Birkenstock shoes, and she looked, what they call very granola. And we sat down with her, and she had just an enormously large business. And what had happened, this was in the late 90s, and the Denver Post had decided they were not going to run ads for escort services anymore, so she had bought like this small-time newspaper that was distributed at liquor stores, and she ran all the escort services ads in Denver, Colorado, and she made an absolute fortune. And she just walked into our office one day saying, what she said, I got 500 to invest. And when she, like right off the bat, and my partner and I looked at each other going, yeah, this is going to be fun, $500. And I sort of filling out the page, and she says, no, 500,000. It's a fun industry, but you got to like people, and you got to like numbers. I know too many people in the industry that are just very good at golf, but they will sell anything to their friends just based on the advice of the wholesaler. I think, in my opinion, you have to be able to go step through these products and make sure they're really good for your clients, and don't just believe what the sales guy is telling you to sell, because there are just such an enormous amount of financial products out there. I mean, one story, when I worked for an oil and gas company, I worked for the coal division, and this is at a very large scale. We had a foreign currency exposure. We were building a coal mine in Australia, actually, and buying a lot of equipment from the United Kingdom. So it was exposure between the UK and and Australia. And there's something called options, and basically gives you the right but not the obligation to buy something at a fixed price. So if costs go up beyond a certain point, you have locked in the maximum cost. Well, obviously you have to pay for that privilege up front. Well, some smart guy in Boston came up with something called a knockout option, which was, if the price ever went above a certain point, you just canceled the option. And my VP of finance, who wasn't so heavily into this stuff, came down and said, hey guys, we should buy these because they're like 2/3 cheaper. And then we ran the numbers, and they would say, yeah, they're 2/3 cheaper because 2/3 of the time they won't pay off. So you got to look in detail at what it is. I mean, this is one of these businesses where the devil's in the details. Oh, I can tell you what I would say to a younger me at about age 19. Study what you really want to study. Don't study what your dad tells you to study. I'm probably, well, I don't know. I'm a CPA, and I've had a license since 1989, and I've never really loved being a CPA. I've loved the finance business, but I've never really loved being a CPA. You should study where your heart is, because I think success follows your heart. And I know that piece of advice can be overdone. I mean, studying music appreciation is probably not going to ever make you enough money to be able to support your family. But within the realm of the reasonable, I mean, do what you want to do. Don't listen all the way. And another thing that I've found is have the courage to stand up and walk out. If somebody is treating you poorly or making promises that they're not keeping in the workplace, just get out. if you got hired once, you'll get hired again. That guy was not the only guy that's ever gonna hire you. You have skills, just take them with you. And the other thing would be just develop your skills and learn individual skills. One of the things I've found, I do a fair bit of computer programming, and I've written a lot of programs for use just internally in my own business as a competitive advantage. And I've never taken a course in it, but I've had an interest in it. So just keep studying something that's interesting to you, and it'll create opportunities for you in places that you never even thought about. It's kind of like being down here. I do a fair bit of work based around software, and I never thought I'd be doing software in Colombia.